Welcome to another lesson for developing technical skills, namely business needs analysis. In this lecture, we are covering scoping of business requirements. We start with the definitions of solution scope, product scope, and project scope. Understand what's comprised in solution scope framework. Then we understand the components of a complete solution scope. From that, we learn how to use it as an approach to scope business requirements to apply machine learning. Finally, we use a scope document template to understand the sections and their purpose. Let's start with the definitions. What is solution scope? International Institute of Business Analysis (IIBA) defines solution scope as a set of capabilities a solution must deliver in order to meet a business need. Business analysts should model and define scope in a way that it provides enough details to address the business need and capabilities. This will help stakeholders to visualize the solution and understand how the solution will deliver the required capabilities. This also becomes the guidelines for requirement elicitation when the business analyst actually works on capturing the detailed or low-level requirements. What is product scope? Project Management Institute (PMI) defines product scope as the features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result. Whether considering design functions or component parts, the key point is that the product scope refers to the actual tangible product. The project scope does not refer to goods. Services or other forms of output can also be products as long as the production is the end goal of a process. In the case of a service, product scope focuses on the actual tasks and responsibilities of the personnel delivering the service. What is project scope? In contrast to product scope, project scope focuses on the various steps taken to deliver a product or service. PMI defines project scope is the work required to output a project's deliverable. Changes happens and project scope management includes the process to manage scope changes and make sure that the project will still come in on time and within budget. Scope is often defined by a work breakdown structure, and changes should take place only through formal change control procedures. Project scope can include assembly lines, budgets, staff trainings, supply chains, and personal allocations. Basically, it refers to anything that is needed in order to arrange the production or implementation of a good or service. Now let's understand what all statements are included in the scope. So scoping has two key categories, namely in scope and out of scope. In scope statements define what components, capabilities, interfaces, organizational units, and processes are included in scope. If a solution is implemented in phases or iterations, the same in scope statements should be described with respect to each phase or iteration. Out of scope items can be tricky to include. Reasons are many. One might argue that it can be anything under the sun and might not be relevant. So the point is, when you're considering out of scope, to meet the purpose, they should be related to the solution but not covered in the scope. For example, the specific solution itself, phase, or iteration. Also, potential requirements that are scoped for future. Apart from the in scope and out of scope, assumptions and constraints are specified while defining the scope. Business or technical dependencies which are related to the solution components or its implementation. Risks associated with the solution scope. Now let's understand what is a solution scope framework. Solution scope framework comprises of drivers, what are the specific business needs and objectives that should be met, What are the opportunities and problems that should be solved? Next is the solution scope itself. We will discuss more about all the components that comprise a complete end-to-end solutions later in this lecture. In a nutshell, it comprises of all the in-scope items and all underlying factors such as assumptions, constraints, dependencies, and the risks which are associated. Finally, the enablers, namely people, process, and technology. Now let's understand the scope components of a complete solution. These are various components of the solution scope from Solution Scope Framework. For a complete solution scope, or you can call it as end-to-end solution scope, a complete solution will comprise 0 or more instances of these component types. We will visit each component and understand its description. First, changes to the existing system. Existing software components, either custom developed applications or products sourced from external suppliers, both installed on the organization's IT infrastructure or hosted externally and configured or customized, may need to be changed in some way to accommodate the requirements of the new solution. New custom developed applications. New software components will need to be developed. The list of these components will need to be identified. This may include the development of prototypes to validate their functionality and or their appearance and navigation. Information storage facilities. The various application components will generate data at different rates that will need to be stored for various intervals. This includes interim data storage, operational data storage, and derived data storage for reporting and analysis. The volume of data to be stored and the types of storage required to deliver the required access times will need to be quantified. Acquired, configured, and customized software products. New software products that are intended to be installed on the organization's IT infrastructure will need to be acquired and then configured or customized. The products required by the solution will need to be ascertained, and the nature of the configurations or customizations will need to be defined. Next, system integrations, data transfers, and exchanges. Data may be supplied to or exchanged between solution components. These integrations, transfers, or exchanges can take many forms, from file transfer to messages exchange using a message queuing facility, to data supplied by an application programming interface, to data exchanged via mailbox to email integration. The precise method by which the data integrations, data transformations, transfers, or exchanges takes place should be listed. The content and format of the data being exchanged, the protocols to be used, and the security to be applied should be defined. If the infrastructural applications required to perform the data integrations, transfers, or exchanges are new, then they should be listed as a member of acquired and customized software products. If existing facilities are being used, their reuse should be stated. Changes to existing business processes. Existing business processes may need to be changed to take advantage of or in response to the new solution. These business processes should be listed with a description of the changes required. New business processes. New business processes may need to be defined to allow the solution to be operated. These processes should be identified. Then we talk about the organizational changes. The organization may need to be changed. New roles and staff may need to be created. Existing roles and staff may need to be changed. New offices and facilities may need to be acquired. Existing offices, locations, and facilities may need to be changed. Then if we talk about the reporting and analysis functions, all applications generate new data and use existing data. The solution will typically need facilities to report on this data, to report on the operation and use of the solution itself, and will need facilities to analyze data. The organization may have an existing report and analysis set of tools that can be reused. Solution data stores are typically operational and do not store the historical time-oriented data. The reporting and analysis component may require a data warehouse, existing data conversions and migrations. Data from existing application components may need to be migrated to the new platforms to avoid data loss and to make the new systems usable. The migration activities may include data reformatting, mapping to new data structures, data enrichment, and data cleansing. New data loads. New data loads may be required to populate some of the data structures of the new solution to make the new system usable. Training and documentation. Internal users and external partner and service provider users may need to be trained in the operation and use of the solution and its business processes. Training documentation and other material may be required. Central distributed and communications infrastructure. The solution may require additional communication infrastructure. For example, to enable external access to mobile users from within the organization or to the external users or service providers or to access external hosted components, it may also require such infrastructure for new locations to be defined as part of the solution. This may also require additional or security infrastructure to support these new accesses. Sets of installation and implementation service. Some of the solution components may require externally provided installation and implementation services to install, configure, or customize these components. Cutover, transfer to production, and support. The solution will need to be transitioned to support. The support function will need to be trained in providing first line support. Second and third line support arrangements will need to be put in place for the operational solution components. The operational and organizational readiness for the solution may need to be assessed, and any issues should be resolved so that organization is prepared and capable of taking on the solution. There may be operational acceptance testing phase where the operability and supportability of the solution is verified and any issues identified during such testing are addressed. Operational functions and processes. Processes may need to be defined relating to the operation of the solution and housekeeping functions to be performed. These functions may need to be configured and tested. These can include monitoring, alerting, and event management, including the configuration of alerts and rules for the handling, backup and recovery, business continuity and availability, capacity planning and management. Next, we talk about the parallel runs. The existing and new solutions may need to be run in parallel for an interval. The results of the parallel runs may need to be compared. Enhanced support or hypercare. After the solution has gone live, an initial period of enhanced support or hypercare may be needed where problems receive special attention to ensure that they are resolved quickly. This may require special arrangements with suppliers. Next, if we talk about the sets of maintenance, service management, and support services, the components of the solution will need to be supported and maintained. Agreements may need to be put in place with the suppliers of these services. Finally, if we talk about the application hosting and management services, elements of the solution may be hosted externally or provided entirely as an outsourced service. These elements will need to be established. Infrastructure may be needed to enable secure communications and exchange of data between these external components. Having understood on how and what to consider in solution scope, let's use them as an approach for scoping business requirements to apply machine learning. So first, use the solution scope framework. The first thing which we need to see there is what are the drivers or opportunities. For example, if the machine learning use case is for proactive network service quality, the potential drivers and opportunities are actively manage customer experience, reduce network-based complaints, intelligently optimize network for efficient use of resources in real time. Next, identify the enablers, namely the organization stakeholders such as customer care, network operations, management, etc. Processes could be like incident management, problem management, resource management, service level agreement management, etc. AI, ML, as the technology enablers. Finally, to identify the various components based on complete or partial scope, the components are selectively marked as in scope or out of scope, along with clear assumptions, constraints, dependencies, and risks. A statement of work or scope document has to be approved by all stakeholders before proceeding with solution delivery process. Once all principles of the solution scope are applied, it is structured as a scope document. Following are the key sections that can be used to include all drivers, enablers, solution components, and other underlying factors. Scope of document shall have table of contents. It shall include sections for audience stakeholders who will review this document, references to additional documentation, definition of terms, acronyms used in the document. It shall include the drivers, an overview of business request overview, business goal and objectives. Elaborates success criteria for deliverable or the result, and lists the constraints, assumptions and dependencies. Scope document shall include as is and to be state of system, and list all non-functional requirements and functional requirements that are in scope to avoid ambiguities. Out of scope in the context of the scoped items can also be included in a separate section. Now you are in a better position to scope business requirements and prepare a scope document or statement for business opportunity you have in hand.